I never thought that at 71 years old I would be pretending to be asleep in a rehabilitation facility while my own daughter whispered to her husband, "Just double the dosage tonight. By morning, the old man's heart will give out, and we'll finally get what we deserve," she said it standing 3 feet from my bed, completely convinced that the sedatives had knocked me out cold. My name is Harold, and what I'm about to tell you shattered everything I believed about family, trust, and the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Before we continue, subscribe to Hallowed Vengeance. Click the notification bell because we have new stories every single day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. For over 4 decades, I built something I was genuinely proud of. Sullivan's Steakhouse started as a single restaurant in downtown Denver back in 1982, when I was just 29 years old with a dream and a $40,000 loan from my father. By the time I turned 65, that one restaurant had grown into a chain of 12 locations across Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska, employing over 400 people and generating annual revenue of nearly $8 million. My wife, Patricia, stood beside me through every struggle and triumph. We raised 3 children together, and I foolishly believed that our family was built on the same foundation of hard work and integrity that made our business successful. Our eldest, Victoria, was 47 years old and had been married to Derek for 18 years. They lived in a beautiful home in Cherry Hills Village, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Colorado. Victoria had never worked a day in her life after college, and Derek's career as a commercial real estate agent had been, to put it charitably, inconsistent. Our middle child, Thomas, was 44 and lived in Seattle. He worked as a software engineer for a major tech company and rarely came home except for holidays. He was quiet, independent, and had never once asked me for money beyond what I gave him for college. Our youngest, Brandon, was 38 and still finding his path. He had struggled with direction for years, but had recently started working as a line cook at one of our Denver locations. He wasn't management material yet, but I saw genuine effort in him for the first time in his adult life. On February 3rd, 2024, I suffered a minor stroke while having dinner at our flagship restaurant. The doctors at Denver Health said I was incredibly lucky. The damage was minimal, but I would need extensive physical therapy and monitoring. They recommended a 6-week stay at Pinecrest Rehabilitation Center, a highly regarded facility in Lakewood. Patricia, who had her own health challenges, including arthritis that made caregiving difficult, agreed that professional rehabilitation was the best option. We had established a living trust years earlier that ensured she would be financially secure, regardless of what happened to me. The trust provided her with our family home, a substantial monthly income, and full medical coverage for life. My will, separate from the trust, would distribute my business assets and remaining properties among our children. During my first week at Pinecrest, the visits seemed normal. Patricia came every afternoon, Brandon stopped by after his shifts, and even Thomas called twice from Seattle to check on my progress. Victoria and Derek visited on the 3rd day, bringing flowers and what appeared to be genuine concern. But something shifted during the 2nd week. Victoria's visits became more frequent, and her questions became oddly specific. "Dad, have you updated your will recently? You know, with the stroke and everything, it might be smart to make sure all your paperwork is in order. Dad, who has signing authority on the business accounts while you're here? Is Mom handling everything? Dad, what's the current valuation of the restaurant chain?" Derek was just curious from a professional standpoint. At first, I interpreted these questions as practical concern from a daughter worried about her aging father. I even felt touched that she was thinking ahead about family matters. I told her that James Richardson, my attorney for 25 years, had copies of all important documents, and that my longtime CFO, Margaret Chen, was handling day-to-day business operations during my recovery. I noticed Victoria writing things down on her phone after each conversation. I noticed the way Derek's eyes lit up when I mentioned that Sullivan's Steakhouse had been valued at $6.2 million during a potential acquisition offer last year. I noticed, but I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. The incident that changed everything happened on February 19th, 16 days into my rehabilitation stay. I had been given my evening medication around 8 p.m., which usually made me drowsy within 30 minutes. The night nurse, a kind woman named Deborah, who had been working at Pinecrest for over 15 years, completed her rounds and dimmed my lights around 9 p.m. But that night, something felt wrong with my medication. The drowsiness never fully took hold. I felt foggy but remained conscious, trapped in a strange twilight state where my body wanted to sleep but my mind refused to surrender completely. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard my door open quietly. Through barely open eyes, I recognized Victoria's silhouette, followed by Derek's larger frame. Visiting hours had ended at 8 p.m. They shouldn't have been there. "Are you sure he's completely out?" Derek whispered. "The nurse said they gave him the full dose. Look at him. He's gone." Victoria approached my bed and actually waved her hand in front of my face. I kept my breathing steady, my eyes almost fully closed, every survival instinct screaming at me to remain perfectly still. "This is taking too long," Derek said, his voice carrying an edge of frustration. "We've been waiting for weeks, and he's actually getting better. The doctors said he might be discharged by mid-March." "I know. That's why we need to accelerate the timeline." The clinical coldness in my daughter's voice made my blood turn to ice. This was not the little girl I had taught to ride a bicycle. This was not the young woman whose wedding I had proudly paid for. This was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "What about the medication?" Derek asked. "I talked to my friend Rachel. She's a nurse practitioner, remember? She said that doubling his heart medication combined with the sedatives could cause cardiac arrest in someone his age, especially with his recent stroke. It would look completely natural. And you're sure about the will? Dad told me himself. Everything gets split 3 ways between me, Thomas, and Brandon. The business is valued at over $6 million. Even split 3 ways, that's $2 million each. Plus the properties, the investments, the life insurance. We're looking at close to $3 million total when it's all settled. $3 million. That was the price my daughter had placed on my life." Derek moved closer to my nightstand, examining the prescription bottles lined up there. "So what's the plan? We just swap out his pills?" "No, that's too traceable," Rachel said. "The easiest way is to crush additional tablets and mix them into his evening pudding or applesauce. The facility serves soft foods with the nighttime medications. No one would ever question it. When? Tomorrow night. I'll volunteer to help feed him dinner. The staff is always short-handed on weekends. They'll be grateful for the help." They continued discussing logistics for another 10 minutes. Every word was a knife twisting deeper into my heart. I learned that Derek had accumulated over $340,000 in gambling debts over the past 2 years. Debts that Victoria had hidden from everyone, including me. I learned that they had taken out a second mortgage on their Cherry Hills home and were 3 months behind on payments. I learned that they had already consulted with an estate attorney about expediting probate and had identified potential buyers for the restaurant chain. "What about Patricia?" Derek asked. "She'll inherit the house and the trust, right? That's separate from the will. Mom's taken care of either way. But she's 69 with her own health problems. How long do you think she'll last without Dad? A year? 2? Eventually, everything flows down to us anyway." The casualness with which my daughter discussed both my death and her mother's eventual passing made me realize I was dealing with someone I had never truly known. The child I raised had been replaced by a monster I couldn't recognize. After they finally left around midnight, I lay in the darkness with tears streaming silently down my face. The physical pain of my stroke recovery was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of what I had just heard. My own flesh and blood, the daughter I had loved unconditionally for 47 years, was planning to murder me for money. But beneath the grief, something else began to emerge. Determination, rage, a burning need for justice that cut through the fog of sedatives and stroke symptoms with crystal clarity. I had less than 24 hours to save my own life. At 6:15 a.m., when Deborah came to check my vitals, I grabbed her wrist with more strength than I had shown since arriving at Pinecrest. "I need your help," I whispered urgently. "It's a matter of life and death." Deborah's experienced eyes immediately recognized that something was seriously wrong. She closed the door and pulled a chair close to my bed. "Mr. Sullivan, what happened? Are you in pain? My daughter is planning to kill me. Tonight. She's going to poison my food. To her credit, Deborah didn't dismiss me as a confused elderly patient. Her 15 years of working with families in crisis had taught her to recognize genuine fear. Tell me everything. I recounted the entire conversation I had overheard. Every detail about the medication plan, the gambling debts, the estate calculations. Deborah listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each revelation. We need to contact the police, she said when I finished. Not yet. I need to speak with my attorney first. And I need proof. Right now it's just my word against theirs. And Victoria is a charming, well-dressed woman from Cherry Hills Village. Who would believe that she's capable of murder? Deborah nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? 3 things. First, I need to make a phone call to my lawyer without anyone knowing. Second, I need you to watch my food today. Don't let Victoria near it. Third, I need access to a recording device. Deborah pulled out her personal smartphone. This has a voice recorder app. I can set it up and leave it in your nightstand drawer. The microphone is sensitive enough to pick up conversation from across the room. Won't you get in trouble? Mr. Sullivan. I became a nurse because I wanted to help people. If your daughter is really planning what you say she's planning, helping you stop her is exactly what I should be doing. At 7:30 a.m., using Deborah's phone, I called James Richardson at his home number. He had been my attorney since I opened my 3rd restaurant location in 1991. And over the decades, he had become one of my closest friends. Harold, what's wrong? Why are you calling from an unknown number this early? James, I need you at Pinecrest immediately. Bring everything related to my current will, and bring the documents we need to make immediate changes. My life depends on it. James arrived by 9 a.m., having canceled his Saturday morning golf game. Deborah had arranged for us to use a private consultation room away from the main patient areas. James, what I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I swear on my life that every word is true. I told him everything. The late-night visit, the conversation about medication, the gambling debts, the estate calculations, the plan to kill me that very night. James listened with the steady focus of a man who had spent 35 years dealing with family conflicts and legal complications. When I finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. Harold, this is extraordinarily serious. If what you're saying is true, we need to involve law enforcement immediately. I know, but first, I need to protect my assets. Victoria thinks she'll inherit $2 million from the business alone. I want to make sure she gets nothing. Not a single penny. James pulled out his laptop and opened a document template. I can draft a new will right now that completely disinherits Victoria. But Harold, you need to understand something. If she and Derek are desperate enough to commit murder, finding out they've been cut from the will might make them even more dangerous. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Over the next 2 hours, James and I crafted a new will that would serve as both protection and trap. The document stated that Thomas would receive 60% of Sullivan's steakhouse and all associated business assets. Brandon would receive 40% of the business plus our vacation property in Vale. Victoria was explicitly excluded from any inheritance, with a clause stating that this exclusion was due to deliberate actions taken against my personal safety and well-being. This clause will raise questions during probate, James noted. Good. By then, I'll have evidence to answer those questions. We also drafted a letter to be opened in the event of my death, detailing everything I had heard and my suspicions about foul play. James notarized all documents on the spot and agreed to register the new will immediately with the county clerk's office. What's your plan for tonight? James asked as he packed up his briefcase. I'm going to let Victoria think her plan is working, and I'm going to record every word. James looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. You're playing a dangerous game, Harold. My daughter declared war on me, James. I'm just defending myself. After James left, I enlisted Deborah's help in preparing for the evening confrontation. She would be working the night shift and promised to position herself near my room throughout Victoria's visit. She also arranged for a colleague to switch my actual medications with placebos, ensuring I would remain fully conscious regardless of what time Victoria arrived. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Patricia visited in the afternoon, and it took every ounce of self-control not to tell her what was happening. But I couldn't risk her confronting Victoria directly. My wife's heart wasn't strong enough to handle this betrayal, and her involvement might tip off Victoria that something had changed. "You seem different today," Patricia said, holding my hand. "More alert than usual." "I had a good night's sleep," I lied. "The doctors say I'm ahead of schedule on recovery." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We'll have you home before you know it." If everything goes according to plan, I thought, I'll be home much sooner than anyone expects. Victoria arrived at 5:30 p.m., exactly when the evening meal service began. She was carrying a small shopping bag that she claimed contained magazines and a new pair of slippers for me. "I thought I'd help you with dinner tonight, Dad. The nurses seem so busy on weekends." "That's thoughtful of you, sweetheart." The word sweetheart nearly choked me, but I maintained my performance, keeping my eyes slightly unfocused, my speech deliberately slurred, projecting the image of a weak, sedated old man. A staff member brought my dinner tray: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and a small cup of chocolate pudding. Victoria immediately took the tray and positioned herself between me and the door, blocking any direct view from the hallway. "Let me cut this up for you, Dad. You shouldn't strain yourself." I watched as she worked, her movements casual and practiced. When she thought I was looking away, she pulled a small pill bottle from her purse and quickly crushed 2 tablets into the chocolate pudding, stirring them until they dissolved completely. My daughter, whom I had rocked to sleep as an infant, was poisoning my food with her own hands. "Here, Dad, start with the pudding. It's your favorite." "Actually, I'm not very hungry tonight. The medications upset my stomach." Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "You need to keep your strength up. The doctors said nutrition is critical for stroke recovery. Just a few bites. Maybe later. Tell me about your week." For the next hour, I engaged Victoria in conversation, steering the topic toward financial matters. The recording app on Deborah's phone was capturing everything from its hiding spot in my nightstand drawer. "Dad, I've been thinking, maybe it would be easier if Derek and I had power of attorney while you're recovering, just to handle the day-to-day business decisions, pay bills, that sort of thing. Margaret is handling the business just fine. But she's not family. Don't you think family should be involved in these decisions?" "The business is in good hands, Victoria. You don't need to worry about it." Her frustration was becoming visible. The easy murder she had planned required me to eat the poisoned pudding, but I kept deflecting her increasingly insistent offers. "Dad, you really should eat something. You're looking pale." "I told you, my stomach is upset. Why are you so insistent?" "I'm just worried about you." "Is that a crime?" The word crime hung in the air between us. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something flash across her face. Suspicion? Fear? The realization that something wasn't going according to plan? At that moment, Derek walked into the room. He had apparently been waiting in the parking lot. "Hey, Harold. Victoria said you weren't eating. Everything okay?" "Fine. Just tired." Derek glanced at Victoria, a silent communication passing between them. He walked to my nightstand and casually picked up one of my prescription bottles, examining the label. "Heavy stuff they've got you on. Must make you drowsy." "Very drowsy. I can barely keep my eyes open." I let my eyelids droop, my head loll slightly to the side, giving them the performance they expected. Through barely open eyes, I watched Derek pick up the pudding cup and bring it closer to my bed. "Come on, Harold. Just a few bites for your daughter. She came all this way to help you." He said, "He's not hungry, Derek." Victoria's voice carried a warning note. "And I'm saying he needs to eat. The old man's wasting away." Derek grabbed my chin, trying to force my mouth open. The moment his fingers touched my face, every instinct screamed at me to fight back. But I had come too far to blow my cover now. "Derek, stop it." Victoria pulled his arm. "If he won't eat, he won't eat. We'll come back tomorrow." "Tomorrow? We don't have time for tomorrow, Victoria. The bank is calling about the house on Monday. We need this done now." "Lower your voice." "Don't tell me to lower my voice. I'm sick of waiting. I'm sick of pretending to care about this old man when all I want is what's coming to us." "Derek, shut up." "No. I'm done being patient. Either we finish this tonight, or I'm going to find another way. Maybe a pillow would be faster. The room went silent. Even Victoria seemed shocked by her husband's explicit threat. I felt Derek's shadow fall across my bed, felt his hands reach toward the pillow beside my head, and then Deborah's voice cut through the darkness. Step away from the patient immediately. Derek spun around. Deborah stood in the doorway with 2 uniformed police officers behind her. The overhead lights flicked on, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent brightness. "What the hell is this?" Victoria demanded. "Victoria Sullivan and Derek Morrison, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted elder abuse." The lead officer stepped forward, handcuffs already in hand. "This is insane. We didn't do anything. Dad, tell them we were just helping you eat dinner." I sat up in bed, fully alert, and looked directly into my daughter's eyes for the first time without pretense. "I heard everything, Victoria. 2 nights ago, when you and Derek thought I was unconscious. I heard you planning to double my medication dosage. I heard you calculating how much my death would be worth. I heard you discussing how long you thought your mother would survive without me." Victoria's face went pale. "Dad, you don't understand. We were just talking. We would never actually. I also watched you crush pills into my pudding tonight. And I have a recording of Derek threatening to smother me with a pillow 2 minutes ago." Derek lunged toward the nightstand, presumably trying to grab the phone and destroy the evidence, but the officers intercepted him before he took 2 steps. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer began, securing Derek's wrists. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "This is entrapment," Victoria screamed, as a female officer approached her. "He set us up. This was all a trap." "A trap requires me to convince you to commit a crime," I replied calmly. "I simply gave you the opportunity to reveal who you really are. You did the rest on your own." As they handcuffed my daughter, I saw tears streaming down her face. But I felt nothing. The child I loved had died somewhere along the way, replaced by a stranger, motivated purely by greed. "Dad, please. I'm your daughter. You can't do this to your own family. You stopped being my family the moment you decided to end my life for money." The officers led them both out. Deborah sat beside me, and for several minutes, neither of us spoke. The weight of what had just happened settled over me like a physical force. "Mr. Sullivan, are you all right?" "No, Deborah. I don't think I'll ever be all right again. But I'm alive, and that's enough for now." The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks with a momentum that felt both surreal and grimly satisfying. James Richardson contacted me the morning after the arrest with additional information his investigators had uncovered. Victoria and Derek's financial situation was even worse than I had heard them admit. Beyond the $340,000 in gambling debts, they had also taken out personal loans totaling another $180,000, using inflated estimates of their expected inheritance as collateral. Several of these loans were from private lenders with connections to organized crime, which explained their desperation. "They weren't just greedy, Harold," James explained. "They were being threatened. One of the lenders had given them a deadline of the end of February to make a substantial payment or face serious consequences." "Are you suggesting I should feel sympathy?" "Absolutely not. I'm simply explaining why they escalated to attempted murder rather than exploring legal options. They had already burned every legitimate bridge." The police investigation moved quickly. The recording from Deborah's phone captured Victoria admitting to the medication plan and Derek's explicit threat to smother me. Combined with the physical evidence of the crushed pills found in the pudding cup, the case against them was overwhelming. Victoria attempted to claim that the recording was obtained illegally and should be inadmissible. But James had anticipated this challenge. Colorado was a one-party consent state for audio recordings, and since I was present during the conversation being recorded, the evidence was fully legal and admissible. I contacted Thomas in Seattle to inform him about what had happened. His reaction surprised me. "Dad, I hate to say this, but I'm not completely shocked." "What do you mean?" "Victoria has always been obsessed with money. When we were kids, she would literally calculate the cost of our Christmas presents and complain if she thought I got more. As adults, she constantly asked about your estate, about when you planned to retire, about what would happen to the business. I tried to tell Mom once that Victoria's questions seemed suspicious, But Mom said I was being paranoid. Why didn't you tell me? Because you always defended her, Dad. Victoria was your princess. I knew you wouldn't believe me without proof. Thomas was right. I had been blind to Victoria's true nature, interpreting her material obsession as practical financial planning rather than pathological greed. Brandon took the news even harder. Despite their age difference, he had always looked up to his older sister. She really tried to kill you? For money? I'm sorry, son. I wish I had better news. I always knew Victoria was selfish, but I never thought she was capable of something like this. What happens now? Now we move forward as a family. What's left of it? The most difficult conversation was with Patricia. I had tried to shield her from the worst details, but the arrest had made local news, and there was no hiding the truth any longer. She cried for 3 days straight. Not for Victoria specifically, but for the loss of the family she thought she had built. Every memory, every photograph, every holiday celebration was now tainted by the knowledge that her eldest child had been plotting murder. How could we have raised someone capable of this? She asked me through tears. I don't know, Patricia. Maybe we gave her too much. Maybe we never taught her the connection between work and reward. Maybe she was born with something missing that we never recognized. Will you ever forgive her? No. And I don't want to. Forgiveness requires remorse, and Victoria has shown nothing but anger at being caught. 3 months later, in May 2024, Victoria and Derek accepted plea deals. Facing overwhelming evidence and the possibility of 15 to 25 years in prison if convicted at trial, they agreed to plead guilty to reduce charges. Victoria received 8 years for conspiracy to commit murder and elder abuse. Derek received 10 years, with additional charges related to the threats he made in my hospital room. James ensured that the details of their crimes became part of the permanent court record. Anyone who searched their names in the future would find the full story of what they had done. Throughout the legal proceedings, Victoria made multiple attempts to contact me. Letters from jail, requests for visitation, messages relayed through her public defender. I returned every letter unopened and declined every request. Mr. Sullivan, her attorney said during one phone call, your daughter is genuinely remorseful. She wants to apologize and explain the circumstances that led to her actions. Circumstances? She planned to poison me in my hospital bed. There are no circumstances that explain or excuse that. She was under extreme financial pressure. Her husband had put them in an impossible situation. Then she should have asked for help. Instead, she chose murder. Please don't contact me again. After the sentencing, I focused on recovery and restructuring my estate. My physical therapy progressed well, and by July 2024, I was back home with Patricia, walking without assistance and slowly regaining the strength I had lost during those traumatic weeks. Thomas flew out from Seattle for a family meeting, where I formally presented the new will and explained my plans for the business. Thomas, you'll receive the majority stake in Sullivan's Steakhouse, but I don't expect you to move back to Colorado or give up your career. Margaret Chen will continue as CEO, and you'll serve as chairman of the board with final authority over major decisions. Dad, are you sure? Brandon works in the restaurant business. Maybe he should have the larger share. Brandon, who had matured considerably over the past few months, shook his head. Thomas, I'm not ready to run a multi-million-dollar company. Maybe someday, but not now. Dad's decision makes sense. Brandon, you'll receive 40% of the business, plus the Vail property. I'm also setting up a management training program for you. If you want to eventually take a leadership role in the company, you'll have every opportunity to earn it. Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down. I know you won't, son. You've already proven that by showing up every day and putting in honest work. Patricia, whose trust arrangements remained unchanged, expressed satisfaction with my decisions. Victoria made her choices, and she'll live with the consequences. Thomas and Brandon have shown us who they really are when it matters most. In September 2024, Thomas helped me negotiate the sale of Sullivan's Steakhouse to a national restaurant group for $6.8 million, significantly more than the earlier valuations. The irony was not lost on me. Victoria and Derek had estimated my business at $6.2 million, and calculated their share at roughly $2 million. By murdering me, they had planned to split an estate worth far less than what my children would now legitimately receive. With the proceeds from the sale, I established a charitable foundation in Patricia's name to support elder abuse prevention programs. I also set up education trusts for my grandchildren, Thomas's 2 kids, ensuring that the next generation would have opportunities built on legitimate foundations rather than criminal schemes. Brandon used his inheritance to open a small restaurant of his own, a farm-to-table concept in Boulder that quickly became popular with locals. His transformation from aimless adult to focused entrepreneur was perhaps the most unexpected outcome of this entire ordeal. Dad, in a weird way, what Victoria did changed my perspective, Brandon told me over coffee one afternoon. I spent years assuming I'd eventually get a piece of the family business without earning it. Watching how that entitlement destroyed her made me realize I needed to build something of my own. That's the lesson I wish all my children had learned, I replied. Inheritance is a privilege, not a right, and it should never come at the cost of your integrity. In March 2025, exactly 1 year after my stroke, Patricia and I took a trip to Italy that we had postponed for decades. We walked through Florence, ate pasta in Rome, and watched the sunset over the Amalfi Coast. It was the honeymoon we never had, and the retirement celebration we never took. Harold, I want to thank you, Patricia said one evening as we sat on our hotel balcony in Positano. Thank me for what? For surviving, for fighting back, for not letting them win. I was protecting myself, Patricia. Any person would have done the same. No, not every person. Some would have eaten that pudding because they trusted their daughter. Some would have confronted her directly and given her a chance to cover her tracks. You were smart enough and strong enough to fight back in the right way. She was right. In those critical hours between discovering the plot and springing the trap, I had made deliberate choices that saved my life and ensured justice. It would have been easy to fall apart, to confront Victoria immediately in emotional devastation, to give her the opportunity to deny everything and eliminate evidence. Instead, I had channeled my pain into strategy. I had assembled allies, gathered evidence, and created a situation where Victoria and Derek would condemn themselves with their own words and actions. Looking back, I realized that the business skills I developed over 40 years, the ability to analyze situations, identify resources, and execute plans under pressure, were exactly what saved me. Victoria had underestimated her father. She saw a sick old man in a hospital bed, an obstacle to be removed, a wallet to be emptied. She never saw the fighter who had built an empire from a single restaurant. Today, at 72 years old, I am healthier than I have been in years. The stroke recovery is complete, and regular exercise has actually improved my overall fitness compared to before the incident. Patricia and I split our time between our home in Denver and extended trips to destinations we had always dreamed of visiting. Thomas visits twice a year and video calls every Sunday. Brandon's restaurant continues to thrive, and he recently announced his engagement to a woman I genuinely like and trust. Victoria and Derek remain in prison. I occasionally receive updates through James about their appeals and parole hearings. Each request for early release has been denied, largely because neither has expressed genuine remorse for their actions. Victoria continues to insist that she was driven to desperation and that I share responsibility for creating the circumstances that led to her choices. I share no responsibility for her decisions. I gave her everything a parent could reasonably provide: education, opportunity, love, and support. She repaid that gift by planning my murder. I often think about what would have happened if I had eaten that pudding. If the sedatives had worked properly, and I had remained unconscious during their late-night visit. If Deborah hadn't been working that night, or if she had dismissed my concerns as the confused ramblings of an elderly stroke patient, I would be dead. My estate would have been plundered. My wife would have grieved herself into an early grave, and Victoria would have gotten away with murder. Instead, I am alive, surrounded by family members who genuinely love me, enjoying a retirement that I earned through decades of honest work. The lesson I carry from this experience is simple but profound. Trust must be earned, not assumed. Blood relation guarantees nothing except shared genetics. True family is defined by actions, not by biology. And those actions reveal themselves most clearly when stakes are highest. Victoria showed me who she really was when she thought no one was watching, and I showed her what I was capable of when my survival was at stake. If you're listening to this story and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, please don't ignore the warning signs. The questions about finances, the unusual interest in your will, the subtle suggestions about power of attorney or early inheritance. These aren't always innocent concerns from caring relatives. Sometimes they're reconnaissance for something much darker. Protect yourself. Document everything. Build relationships with trusted professionals who can help you when family cannot be trusted. And never, ever underestimate your own capacity to fight back. My daughter tried to kill me for money, but I'm still here, and she's the one who lost everything. At 72 years old, I have finally learned the true value of the people who deserve my trust. And that knowledge, painful as it was to acquire, has made these final chapters of my life richer than any inheritance could ever be. If you like this story, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thanks for watching.